It started at exactly 2:13 a.m. Not around. Not close to. Exactly. Because when your phone explodes with 3 security alerts in under 10 seconds, your brain logs onto details whether you want it to or not. The first vibration dragged me out of sleep. The second made me sit up. The third? That's when I knew something was wrong. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand, still half disoriented, and squinted at the screen. Security alert, motion detected, rear living room window. That alone was enough to wake me up. That side of the house faced open land. No road, no foot traffic, nothing but fencing and a stretch of dock ranch property. The only things that ever triggered motion back there were animals. Deer, coyotes. Once, a wandering cow from a neighboring property. But then the second alert came in. Window sensor. Open. Now I was fully awake. Because animals don't open windows. People do. And people who open windows at 2 in the morning, they are not there for a friendly conversation. I swung my legs off the bed, already moving. No lights, no noise, just instinct. Living on a ranch teaches you something most people in the suburbs never learn. You handle problems yourself first, ask questions later. And right now, this was a problem. The hallway was pitch dark, but I knew every inch of that house without needing light. My steps were slow, controlled, deliberate. Then I heard it, a faint scraping sound, metal against wood, followed by a low grunt. Someone struggling, forcing their way through. My jaw tightened. That confirmed it. This wasn't a false alarm. This was real. Dad! The voice came from down the hall. Soft, sleepy, but scared. My kid, of course. Alarm systems don't just wake homeowners. They wake everyone. I turned slightly, keeping my voice low but steady. It's okay. Stay in your room. Lock the door. Don't come out. A pause. Then, click. Door locked. Good. That was one thing under control. I stepped into the kitchen and reached for the nearest solid object. A cast iron skillet. Heavy. Reliable. Not ideal. But in the moment, it didn't need to be. It just needed to work. Another sound. Closer now. A dull thud. Like someone had just dropped down onto the floor. Inside, adrenaline hit hard, but my breathing slowed automatically. That's a funny thing about pressure. If you've dealt with enough of it in your life, your body doesn't panic. It sharpens. Focus narrows. Everything unnecessary fades out. I moved toward the living room. Slow. Silent. And then, I turned the corner. And froze. Because what I saw didn't match the situation. Not even close. A woman. Standing up. Inside my house. Brushing dust off her sleeve like she had just stepped in through a front door. For a split second, my brain didn't process it. Because it didn't fit. Intruders don't act like that. They don't walk in casually. They don't fix their clothes. They don't sigh like they're annoyed. Then the TV light flickered across her face. And everything clicked. Linda Parker, HOA president. Out of all the possibilities my brain had run through in those few seconds, that wasn't one of them. Not even remotely. She adjusted her blazer, glanced around my living room, and let out a frustrated breath. Finally, she muttered, "I knew you were ignoring my notices." I just stared at her, trying to process how those words could possibly exist in the same reality as what just happened. You broke into my house. Her head snapped toward me instantly, and just like that, her expression hardened. "I did not break in," she said sharply. "Your window was clearly unsecured. That's a violation." I blinked once, slowly, because I needed to make sure I heard that right. "You crawled through my window. At 2 in the morning. You were unresponsive," she shot back, like that explained everything. "I've issued multiple compliance notices regarding your property." Compliance notices. At 2 a.m., inside my house. My grip tightened around the skillet. You don't get to enter someone's home because they didn't reply to your emails. Linda folded her arms. Calm, controlled, completely convinced she was right. "This community has standards," she said. "Your fence exceeds approved height limits, and your security system is not HOA compliant." I stared at her, actually stared, because she wasn't joking. There was no hesitation, no awareness of how insane this sounded. You're standing in my living room, I said slowly, after climbing through a window, and you're talking about fence height. She didn't flinch. If residents followed the rules, situations like this wouldn't happen. That's when something shifted. Not fear, not confusion. Something colder, clearer. You need to leave, I said. Now. For a brief moment, her jaw tightened, but then she exhaled and reached into her bag. I will, she said, after I document the violations. And just like that, she pulled out her phone and started taking pictures of my house, my furniture, my living room, like this was normal, like she had authority, like she belonged there. Linda, I said, my voice sharper now, put the phone down. She ignored me, snapped another photo, and that's when everything escalated, because from down the hallway, my kid's voice came again, closer this time. Dad? I turned instinctively, and in that exact second, the alarm system triggered. The house exploded with sound. A deafening siren tore through the walls, red lights flashing violently as the system switched into full emergency mode. Linda jumped, actually jumped. What is that? She shouted, spinning around. I didn't answer, because I already knew. The system had done its job. Silent alert sent. Police notified. Response triggered. Linda's face changed instantly. For the first time since she stepped into my house. She looked unsure. Turn it off, she demanded quickly. Right now. I didn't move, didn't step forward, didn't even blink. No, the word landed heavy. Final. Outside. Faint at first, but unmistakable. Sirens. Getting closer. Linda took a step back. Then another. Her confidence cracking, piece by piece. You're overreacting, she said. Faster now. This doesn't need police involvement. I just looked at her, standing there, in my house, at 2 a.m., after breaking in, after waking my kid, after acting like she had authority, and I said the only thing that mattered in them all. You should have thought about that before you came through my window. The sirens grew louder, closer, closer. The sirens got loud fast, not distant, not background noise, right outside, gravel crunching under tires. Car doors slamming, radios crackling, everything happening at once. Linda heard it too, and just like that, her entire demeanor shifted. The panic didn't disappear. It got buried, replaced with something sharper, more controlled, more dangerous. Turn it off, she said again, but quieter this time. Calculated. We can resolve this internally. I didn't move, didn't answer, because that word, internally, told me everything. That's how people like her operated. Quiet pressure, closed doors, no witnesses. Not tonight. Police. Anyone inside. A voice from the front porch. Firm. Clear. Before I could react, Linda moved. Fast. Not toward the window she came through. Not toward the back exit. Toward the front door. Hey! I started. Too late. She unlocked it, pulled it open, and stepped forward like she belonged there. Officers, she called out, her voice suddenly calm, steady, almost relieved. Thank goodness you're here. I stared at her, because the tone, it wasn't defensive, it wasn't guilty, it was confident, like she had just regained control of the situation. 2 officers stepped inside, scanning the room quickly. Their eyes landed on me, standing there, holding a cast-iron skillet. Yeah, not ideal. So, one of them said, measured but cautious, can you set that down for me? I held it for half a second longer, then slowly placed it on the table. Thank you, he nodded. Now, what's going on here? Linda didn't hesitate, not even for a second. She stepped forward smoothly, already in full performance mode. I'm the HOA president for this community, she said, pulling out her phone like it was a badge. I was conducting a compliance follow-up when this homeowner became aggressive. I blinked. Aggressive? You broke into my house. I cut in, but she kept going. Didn't even acknowledge me. I've issued multiple notices regarding property violations, she continued. There was no response. Tonight, I observed an unsecured access point, which raised a safety concern. The second officer frowned slightly. An unsecured access point, meaning. Linda gestured vaguely behind her. The rear window. Silence. A brief, heavy pause. And that led you to enter the home, the officer asked carefully. Linda didn't flinch. Yes, she said, for community safety verification. I let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Couldn't help it. She crawled through my window at 2 a.m. Both officers looked at her now. Really looked. The first one said slowly, "Is that accurate?" Linda adjusted her posture slightly. Not nervous, just refining the story. "I entered through an unsecured point," she said again. "My intentions were strictly professional." Professional? At 2 in the morning? Through a window? I shook my head. "This is insane." "Sir," the officer said, raising a hand slightly, "we'll get your side. Just give us a second." Linda gave the smallest nod, like she'd just regained ground. That's when I noticed something. She wasn't worried. Not really. Which meant one thing. She thought this would work. Maybe it had worked before. Maybe people had backed down. Maybe no one had pushed back hard enough. Until now. "Is anyone else in the home?" the second officer asked. "My kid," I said immediately. "In their room. Door locked." The officer nodded. "Good. We'll check in a moment." Linda shifted slightly at that. Just a small movement, but noticeable, because now the situation was expanding beyond her control. The first officer looked around the room. Really looked. The open window, the disturbed frame, the dirt marks on the floor, Linda's sleeve, still smudge, evidence, everywhere. He said, his tone changing just slightly. "Can you step over here with me for a moment?" There it was. That shift. Subtle, but real. Linda noticed it too. "Is there a problem?" she asked. Just a few questions. She forced a smile. "Of course." As they stepped aside, the second officer turned to me. Lower voice now. More direct. "All right," he said. "Start from the beginning." So I did. Every alert. Every sound. Every second. I didn't exaggerate. Didn't need to. The truth was already unbelievable enough. As I spoke, I saw it happen. That moment. That shift in his expression. From neutral to skeptical to concerned. And then she said I left her no choice. I finished. The officer exhaled slowly. "Okay." He stepped away, walked back toward his partner. Across the room, Linda was still talking, but now her tone had changed. Faster, sharper, less polished. And then everything stopped, because the first officer said something that cut straight through the room. "I'm going to need you to turn around." Silence. Linda blinked. "I'm sorry." "Turn around," he repeated. "Hands behind your back." And just like that, the control she thought she had, gone. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "You don't understand." "I understand enough," he said firmly. The second officer stepped closer. Now it was real. For a split second, it looked like she might argue. Push. Fight it. But then she saw it. The posture. The certainty. This wasn't a conversation anymore. Slowly, reluctantly, she turned around. The cuffs clicked. Sharp. Final. And in that moment, the woman who walked into my house like she owned it realized she didn't. "You are being detained for unlawful entry." "I'm the HOA president," she snapped. "Not in here," the officer replied calmly. That line? That was it. Because authority like Hayes only works when people believe in it. And right now, no one did. As they started reading her rights, she twisted her head just enough to look at me. And the expression on her face? Not fear, not regret. Something colder. "This isn't over," she said. I held her gaze. Didn't look away. "Yeah," I replied quietly. "Now it starts." Outside, the red and blue lights painted the ranch in flashing color. Inside, everything had changed, because this wasn't just a break-in anymore. This was a mistake. And she had just made it in the worst possible place. A house owned by someone who knew exactly how far the law could go, and how to use it. I didn't expect things to calm down. But I didn't expect them to escalate this fast either. By morning, the entire neighborhood had a version of the story. Not the truth, never the truth, just enough pieces, twisted, trimmed, and rearranged, to make it look like I was a problem. It started with a notification. HOA Community Update, Incident Review. I opened it, already knowing it wouldn't be accurate. Still, reading it made my jaw tighten. Last night, an unfortunate interaction occurred between a board representative and a resident displaying aggressive behavior. The HOA is reviewing safety concerns and will take appropriate action. Aggressive behavior. That's what they went with. No mention of the window. No mention of the arrest. Just vague language and careful wording. Classic. The comments came fast. Some people just don't respect the rules. HOA need to take control before this gets worse. Safety should come first. I stared at the screen for a long second. Then I put the phone down, because I already knew. This wasn't about public opinion. This was about pressure. And it didn't stop there. By noon, the first envelope showed up. Hand-delivered, official, stamped, aggressive. I opened it standing right there on the porch. Inside, 3 violation notices, all dated that same morning. Non-compliant perimeter fencing, unauthorized surveillance system, hostile conduct toward HOA personnel. I almost laughed. Hostile conduct. Right, because defending your home at 2 a.m. is apparently unacceptable now. Then I saw the bottom line. Failure to comply within 72 hours may result in legal action, fines, and property lien proceedings. There it was. Not just pressure. A threat. I leaned against the doorframe, reading it again. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I understood it too well. That's when it clicked. This wasn't Linda acting alone in the mall. This was the HOA closing ranks, protecting itself. And if they were willing to go this far this quickly, then Linda wasn't just some overbearing president. She was part of a system that had never been challenged. Until now. The second envelope came that evening. Certified mail. That's never a good sign. I opened it at the kitchen table this time. Slower, more deliberate. Inside, a legal notice. Notice of intent to file civil action. Plaintiff, Linda Parker. Defendant, me. I let out a slow breath. Read the first paragraph. Then the second. Claims included. Emotional distress. Defamation. Interference with HOA duties. Illegal restriction of access to association-governed land. That last one made me pause. I read it again. Restriction of access. And then I understood. She wasn't just coming after me for the incident. She was coming after the land. My ranch. Because technically, part of the outer boundary overlap with HOA-designated shared oversight zones. A meaningless technicality most people never even looked at. But Linda, she had looked, and now she was trying to use it. I leaned back in the chair, completely still, because right there, in that moment, everything changed. Up until now, I had been reacting, defending, responding. But this was different, because she had just made a legal move. And that was a mistake, a big one. I picked up the notice again. Read the attorney's name at the bottom. Recognize it immediately. Not because I knew them personally, but because I knew the type. High volume, pressure-based, used to people folding before things ever reached a courtroom. That wasn't going to work here. Not even close. I stood up slowly, walked over to the hallway, opened a door I hadn't touched in years. Inside, boxes, files, records, and one thing I hadn't needed in a long time, my old case binder. Because here's the part Linda didn't know. The part no one in that HOA knew. I wasn't just some homeowner who lived quietly on a ranch. I was a retired attorney, 25 years, civil litigation, property law, cases that made people regret filing them in the first place. And I didn't advertise it, didn't need to. But now it mattered. I flipped open the binder, ran my hand across the pages. Familiar, precise, structured. This wasn't new territory. This was home ground. And Linda, she had just walked straight into it. That night, I didn't respond to the notice, didn't call, didn't argue. I prepared, pulled property records, survey maps, HOA bylaws, state statutes, and piece by piece, the picture came together. Because what Linda filed, it wasn't just weak, it was reckless. Claims that contradicted each other, authority she didn't legally have, access rights that didn't apply to my property, and the biggest mistake of all, she put it in writing, which meant I could dismantle it completely. The next morning, I made one call, not to fight, to end it, but not the way she expected, because this wasn't going to be a quiet settlement. This wasn't going to be a warning. This was going to be a lesson. And by the time it was over, not just Linda, but that entire HOA was going to understand one thing clearly. They didn't just pick a fight. They picked the wrong person to fight it with. The lawsuit didn't take long. 3 days after the notice, she filed. Fast, aggressive, and exactly the kind of move people make when they think the other side is going to panic. Most do. Most people see legal paperwork, deadlines, and attorney names, and fold before anything even begins. That's the system. Pressure early, win without a fight. But this time, she miscalculated. I didn't respond emotionally, didn't call her, didn't argue with the HOA, didn't even acknowledge it publicly. I responded the only way that mattered. On paper, the first document I filed was simple, clean, precise, motion to dismiss, but not the kind you file hoping for leniency. The kind you file when you already know the case doesn't stand. Every claim she made, I addressed, line by line. Emotional distress, dismissed. No evidence, no basis. Defamation, dismissed. Truth as defense, and I had documentation. Interference with HOA duties, dismissed, because those duties didn't legally extend into my property the way she claimed. And that last one, the one about restricting access to HOA-governed land, that's where it got interesting, because that claim relied on one assumption, that the HOA had authority over part of my ranch. They didn't. Not legally, not structurally, not even vaguely. And I proved it. Property surveys, county records, zoning documentation, HOA bylaws themselves. All of it pointed to the same thing. Linda had either misunderstood the law or ignored it completely. Neither one works in court. But I didn't stop there, because of defense alone, that's survival. I wasn't interested in surviving. I filed a counterclaim, and that's when things shifted. Trespassing, unlawful entry, harassment, abuse of authority, each one backed with evidence, each one tied directly to her actions. And then, the part one knew would hit hardest, a request for damages, not exaggerated, not inflated, calculated, because this wasn't about money. It was about consequences. The moment her attorney received that filing, everything changed. I know that kind of law firm. High pressure, high volume. They don't expect resistance. They expect compliance. So when they opened my response, they didn't see panic. They saw structure, strategy, control, and more importantly, they saw experience. That's when the call started. First from their office. Polite, measured, testing the waters. Perhaps we can resolve this matter outside of court. Of course, that was always the plan. Just not mine. I declined. Calmly, directly, because we were past that point. Then came the HOA, emergency meeting, mandatory attendance. I showed up, not early, not late, right on time. The room felt different this time. Heavier, tense, because now they knew, not everything, not yet, but enough. The same board members who stood at my door days earlier, they didn't look confident anymore. They looked careful. The man who had warned me to resolve things quietly cleared his throat, tried to take control of the room. We are here to address recent legal developments. He didn't get far, because someone in the room cut him off. Why are we being sued? Not calm, not polite, direct. That question changed everything, because up until that moment, the narrative had been controlled. But now people were asking questions, real ones. Did she actually break into his house? Is this going to cost us money? Are we liable for this? That last one, that's the one that matters. Because HOAs don't fear arguments. They fear liability. The board tried to redirect, tried to soften the situation, but it was too late, because then I stood up, didn't raise my voice, didn't argue, didn't accuse. I just placed a folder on the table. Inside, everything: police report, photos, timeline, legal response. And I said one sentence: you should read this before you decide what happens next. Silence. Real silence. Because they didn't need emotion. They didn't need explanation. They needed facts. And now they had them. The meeting didn't last long after that. Because once the truth is in the room, control disappears. And that's exactly what happened. Within 24 hours, Linda's attorney filed a request. Extension. That's legal language for one thing. They needed time. Time to reassess. Time to rethink. Time to figure out how bad the situation really was. And it was bad because now, this wasn't just a lawsuit. It was exposure. And Linda, she was at the center of it. But the moment it all finally hit her, the moment she understood what she had done, didn't happen in a courtroom, didn't happen in a meeting. It happened in a hallway, outside the hearing room, when she